Welcome, beautiful souls. So this video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be more of a podcast style. So today we are going to put together astrology, biology, science, consciousness, and religion all together. This is very good because I want to help you guys manifest, and this is how you do it. An oil called Christus. So, Yuri, this is my guest star today. So what is Christus, Yuri?
Well, as May had already said, Christus is an oil. I can talk about its name later, I suppose, but Christus is an oil that is in your body, and this oil is a hormone. And the only known hormone to actually change its form through a thought form or an electricity given to it, it can change how this oil operates or where it moves in the body, not using other organs and glands to actually change its form. It's only actually changing its form and operation through thoughts or frequencies.
So how was the Bible, that's right, I said the Bible, how is the Bible basically an anatomy lesson for this Christus?
It's an anatomy lesson or a medical manual when it comes to Christus, if you know how to read it, because it all points towards this one system, this how Christus operates in your body. And if you actually think about it, Christus, or get rid of the us, Christ, if you read it with a ch, it's Christ. Why does it sound like Christ? Why is it Christ? Why is Christ compared to this oil, or this oil compared to Christ? You read through the Bible, every king, every queen was always anointed, I should say, when they were appointed to be royalty. And where does this whole tradition of anointing actually come from? It comes from the symbology of mimicking how Christus would fill up your brain. So Christus travels from your sacrum to your brain, and they actually have x-rays of Christus traveling from the base of your spine, or your sacrum, which is right behind your tailbone, and it travels from your tailbone all the way up your spine, right up until your 33rd vertebrae. And once it reaches that point, it's called the crucifixion. So Christ was crucified on the cross. And if you actually look at the back of the brain, it looks like a cross in an X-ray. And the only other mammal in the entire planet that has a brain like our own that we can see, that has this same gland in their brain called the cave of Brahma, is a lamb. A lamb in the tradition that Christ grew up in, I should say, is Hebrew. And in the Jewish Hebrew culture, they sacrificed a lamb every year for the coming back of Christ. And that tradition lasted for some odd 1,000, 2,000 years before he actually came to be, or at least the individual that we call Christ. And if you cut open the brain of a lamb, you can see that on the back of their brain they have that cross pattern, and inside their brain they have this cave of Brahma, where Christ was compared to the lamb, the last sacrificial lamb. It had to be the perfect sacrifice, and so they would find the perfect white lamb to sacrifice in some symbolism to the coming back of Christ. Or when Christ died, the same story had taken place in that story. So in our brains, like I said, we have this cave, or we have this hollow spot called the cave of Brahma. And when this oil passes all the way up the spine through the back of the brain, it'll go into this cave of Brahma and fill it up. if you reverse the letters around, it's the same letters that in the Old Testament, Abraham, the name of Abraham, he asked God while he was residing in a cave, what is your name? How do I know you? And he said, I am. And the burning bush and all that, people should know that story. And if they don't, he came to Abraham in a bush and said, I am that I am. And I have read other interpretations of I am that with a comma, I am. And if you went around all day long saying I am that I am, you start to realize you're connected to everything. Just like I'm connected to the plants that made this coffee or the gourd that we have sitting right here. There's an electrical signature inside this gourd or inside the plants that made this coffee, never mind the actual coffee itself. And there's an electrical signature inside me, and that makes me similar to everything. And if you think of fire back then, it was the only electricity or energy that they knew. Mm-hmm. And so it was their way of showing that you are an electricity, and it's recognizing that everything is connected through this electricity, that the stones will cry to him or the water will move in his name. Mm-hmm. Is what it says in the Bible. And the Tibetan monks actually call this this identity center your I am center. And so that's pretty interesting as well. So they and so going off the Tibetan monks, they put electrical probes on their brains, and while they went into 16 different electrical probes, and while they went into a state of a state of hypnosis, I guess we just finished a talk on that, state of hypnosis or meditation, mm-hmm. which they do all day long. They started realizing that there's a specific center in the brain that would be used or lit up on an electrical level higher than all the other ones, and that is that cave of Brahma. All of the I am statements, the feelings that you have, everything that you identify with is all coming from that one empty spot in your brain.
Holy smokes. So I have a question for you. Everyone knows what Christmas is, right? So how do we relate Christ to Christmas? So how does that story in the Bible of Christ, Santa Claus, how does that all play into this Christus oil that's in your body?
So there's big argument with Judeo-Christianity, with traditional Christianity. And Judeo-Christianity would say that Christ was never born in December. Where is all this Christianity getting this idea from? Mm-hmm. And I think people forget the history of where the medieval times actually started, and what time period it was happening, where it started, who actually pushed the medieval times to happen. And if you look back, it was the church. It was the Vatican. It was Rome at the time. Rome took over the known world. And when Rome took over the known world, there was an emperor in power, and his name was Julian. Julian made the Julian calendar, and their god at the time, the Roman god, was the sun god. And so he wanted to go not by a lunar calendar, which is what the Judeo-Christianity was using at the time, but a solar calendar to help worship their god. And so he called it the Julian calendar, started to put a focus on how we organize our day-to-day life by the sun god, so that we're worshiping the sun god while we go day to day. And in the Bible it says when God returns that no one will know the time nor the season. This is in Revelation. No one will know the time nor the season, but no one will know the time, but they'll know the season. Mm-hmm. And he says in Judeo-Christianity to watch for the sliver moon. The sliver moon, does it have spiritual relevance of when Christ is supposed to come, like that night? or is it just a marker of when Christ is going to be felt? So in the again, the Judeo-Christianity, which is the oldest, more original texts and traditions that we can go off of what Christ was actually doing while he was walking on earth, is that September to October they have a feast called the Feast of Trumpets. And in 2012, Judeo-Christianity, alongside the Mayan calendar, said that that's when Christ is supposed to come, or when the world is supposed to end, or at least when that was our interpretation of the Mayan calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that the world was supposed to end, but the world was supposed to change.
Mm-hmm.
So back then, we used to go by the signs and the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
The signs of the seasons, as the stars were moving and the sliver moon. We have different seasonal markers like fall, spring, all these seasonal changes. And in the pagan calendar, they have a little bit more seasons than we do of spring, summer, fall, winter. Just 4. They actually have 8. But mathematically, this all adds up later. And I can talk a little bit more about that later if you like. But to save time, I'm going to say that as the seasons are changing, your body changes, and it allows you to see and hear things that weren't there in another season.
Mm-hmm.
And some people might call that multiple personality or schizophrenic. Well, if you come and see me for herbs, I'm going to be telling you that no, you're not dealing with any sort of diagnosis or indifference to another person's brain. What you're feeling is electricity, and you're interpreting the electricity. We used to call those people prophets. We used to call those people seers. And those prophets and seers are special people. They're very special people. We should be cherishing that connection that they have with the universe. And so the prophets that would see these seasons, they would say, okay, well, this is the marker of when Christ is supposed to come. And what they said was, this is the marker of when Christ is supposed to be at its highest in every person in the world. And it was a shift of a 5,000 year long cycle.
Mm-hmm.
It's called an age in astrology, and the age of Aquarius is what we shifted into.
Mm-hmm.
And so the age of Aquarius is the age of enlightenment, but the age of Aquarius is holding a jar pouring out some sort of liquid.
Oh.
And this liquid is an artistic representation of the oil.
Oh my gosh.
That we have in our bodies, and the woman bringing that oil to anoint us, anoint our minds, so that we can now fully embody the energy that we hold inside of ourselves, or the connection that we have with the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we shifted into that, it marked in the Judeo-Christianity the Feast of Trumpets.
Mm-hmm.
The Feast of Trumpets, some people heard those trumpets, and some people actually caught them on video. If you can't find it on YouTube anymore, I mean, I can't. If you can, then definitely send us a link and we can connect it to this.
Yeah,
to
I
this
can't
video.
find any videos, but back then I
But
was able to.
back then, like, you could hear it. Car alarms went off. It woke people up from a dead sleep.
I heard it. It was like at midnight when I was living in Regina in 2012.
And so, according to Judeo-Christianity, hearing the trumpets, or being attuned to God's frequency, or being attuned to that frequency, was anointing you to have this Christus oil and saving you. And so, according to that, again, we're supposed to be shifting into this 1,000 years of peace.
Mm-hmm.
And 1,000 years of peace, I think, if you agree with me or you disagree with me, I think is definitely going to come when everybody realizes that they are a god or a goddess in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we're connected to each other by being, by this hormone inside our bodies, or this electricity. We influence each other just by a thought. Across the world, you can have a dream of somebody and they can have the same dream as you.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that not connect you guys?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that really explains how, again, we connect to our God selves, and we connect to Christ. But when Julian changed the calendar, he was trying to stray away from the Judeo-Christianity, and he wanted to set up his own Christianity, calling it Roman Catholicism. Roman Catholicism, or Roman Catholic, was the tradition that he wanted everybody to live by, and if you didn't, then he would go and kill you. He would send a group of Roman soldiers and go into little towns and villages and raid them and murder everyone who wasn't willing to switch to this new system, because some people wanted to protect their traditions and how they pass down their information. And of course, a lot of people aren't willing to change. I mean, think of COVID. A lot of people didn't want to accept any change with that. I know myself, it didn't change too much in my life, but for some people it really impacted theirs. And so that type of world change, a lot of people weren't ready for back then. So the medieval times came and went, and pagans were all killed off, who were ready to defend the signs and seasons. And he created a story, and he says, you know what, instead of going to use all my resources, send my soldiers out and keep this this mass murder going on, I'm going to try to combine paganism with this Christianity. And that's where he got the winter solstice idea of combining this is when Christ is supposed to come, is when the winter solstice happens, marking the closest seasonal shift to after that season, which still worshipped the sun god Baal, and he created a figure called Santa Claus. Took from other traditions, he created a figure called Santa Claus, but naming the gland in your brain, or the cross in your brain, the Santa Claus gland. And well, if you're good for Santa Claus, then he'll give you gifts, and if you're bad for Santa Claus, then he will give you coal. And according to the Hindu culture, the lower 4 chakras are represented by fire. And what does fire make? Coal. And so when I was saying that the Christus oil can travel upward, travel down, it can travel through your body and operate in different ways based off your thought patterns, your Santa Claus gland is what holds your intention, or what you really want to manifest.
Your desires.
And it says in the book of Deuteronomy that God gives us desires for a reason. And now if Christ is speaking through the Bible, then he gives us desires for a reason. Christus is trying to reawaken itself, and if you don't have a desire, then the Santa Claus gland can't reawaken the Christus oil once it transitions from your spine into your brain. There's a really cool science that the Christus oil taps into, and it's called dark matter. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of dark matter, but dark matter is measured through electrical instruments, not any microscope. You can't see it. It's a spiritual thing. It's a spiritual and energetic thing. And so when you hold an intention in your Santa Claus gland, it can reawaken, or with this electrical signature, the Christus from dark matter realm, and the I'm going to say it, the realm of reality, because the gland, the hollow gland, the cave of Brahma, will only accept the Christus oil once it's filled with an intention, or it has an electrical charge coming from it after the Santa Claus gland has already touched it. Santa Claus gives you gifts, so long as you're focused on what you truly desire. And so if you don't, then just like the Hindu culture, the Christus will actually go back down the spine and sit back in your sacrum, which is also the center for desires in the Hindu culture. It's just above your root chakra.
Your sacral chakra.
Yeah, your sacral chakra.
Yeah. And
you could call that sending back down a descent, or a fall back to hell, or back into coal.
Or you get heaved up, like heaven,
Heaved up, which
the
is
spine, into your cave of Brahma.
Yeah, and so when the oil travels up, it's called in Latin heaven when it travels up your spine, and heaven is a compound word in Latin, and it means to be heaved up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
So, no one comes to the Father except through me. The Son says, and the heaven is up here,
Mm-hmm.
and no one goes to Him except through Christ, which is the oil.
So explain my next question. My next question is, so once Christ gets crucified, aka the oil, so how does that whole thing play out? Like how?
So Christ says that he died or shed his blood for us, and or giving the analogy of shedding his blood for us, or quite literally, they did find the Ark of the Covenant.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that?
Oh, what?
They found the Ark of the Covenant
Oh my gosh.
inside a cave in a mountain. And no kidding, they found it in a cave. Cave of Brahma once again.
Oh my gosh.
But the Ark of the Covenant was supposed to be, I guess, a container that God said that He would reside in, or He would sit in.
Mm-hmm.
And when Jesus went up a mountain with His cross, His blood went down the cross. And while this earthquake happened and shattered the mountain all the way down until the Judeo-Christian temple, it shattered the temple in half, and it shattered the ground and the mountain, and all the way down that cross through the cracks of that mountain, landing on the Ark of the Covenant, was His blood, and that was the last sacrifice. And so they collected His blood, and of course they found that he had more or less chromosomes. I can't remember. I'm fairly certain we can look up these facts because they're all over the place. If you got all knowledge at your fingertips, you just have to be curious enough to look it up.
Mm-hmm.
And it found that he had more or less chromosomes, meaning that he only had one parent, and that's quite physically impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And so electrically he was born. He was born without a dad, and he was God's son. So the physical with everything that happens in the physical world, it must take place in the spiritual, according to Wiccan or pagan culture. And
Mm-hmm.
so what takes place in the spiritual must take place in the physical.
Mm-hmm.
And so his physical sacrificing, shedding his blood for us, is also the spiritual of the Christus oil traveling up the spine.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can imagine a spine right here, as it travels up the spine,
skeleton.
yeah,
We need to get a skeleton.
We should get a little skeleton. As it travels up the spine and it reaches the back of the brain, where the brain has a cross. The cross, remember, is made. The pattern of the cross is made by the Santa Claus gland, which is the transition point for it to go into the cave of Brahma. But once the oil reaches that Santa Claus, it is called a crucifixion,
Mm-hmm.
and the oil dies for 2.5 days. And when Jesus was born again, or rose from the grave that he was in, the tomb he was in, or the cave once again that he was in, he took 2.5 days, which is the Shabbat that the Judeo-Christianity celebrates, and or they call it the High Sabbath,
Mm-hmm.
which is what we would when we would celebrate Easter. And Easter is Ishtar. It's another Roman god.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to give more credit to the Roman gods, more power to the Roman gods, because we have a belief that if people believe in the gods, then the gods have power. And I know you find that in movies and stuff all the time.
Yeah.
There's truth hidden inside most of these things, but they like to have their facts straight.
Mm-hmm.
So when this crucifixion happens, it's that representation of Christ dying on the cross, and that dark matter that I was talking about earlier. It recedes and dies, and it recedes to this energetic state where it doesn't move. It almost ceases to exist, and after 2.5 days, then the Santa Claus gland kind of gives it an electrical charge and brings it back to life.
Mm-hmm. So more on this topic, you know me, I will put together the astrology piece behind this Christus oil, because this Christus oil, from my knowledge, happens once every month on the moon cycle, which is also really interesting. So are you able to elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the I think it's only ironic that
you don't want to know what's in this, by the way. It's exactly what you think is in this.
It's so I think it's only ironic, and that it has lasted up until maybe the last few years, and I think the term is still being used today, mm-hmm. that a woman's moon cycle is when her period is when her period comes.
Yeah, and it's the cycles of the woman's hormones is linked up with the full moon.
Yeah.
That's why typically, like when the full moon is happening, a balanced female hormones are supposed to link up. Their period is supposed to link up with the full moon.
Sync with the full moon.
Sync with the full moon.
And so when we say they're supposed to sync with the full moon, you can also elaborate on that word, sync, with synchronicity. Mm-hmm. So when your body is in complete synchronicity with the earth, you see those angel numbers, the repeated patterns. You start to recognize the patterns. Mm-hmm. You start to see the patterns, and some patterns are that of animal signs, and some patterns are that of numbers. Yeah. And that's the world's language, trying to talk to you and engage you as a prophet. Engage you with the synchronicity and the communication that the world is trying to give you. And if a woman is balanced, then she has her period on the full moon, and that's her 30-day cycle. And a man has his hormone cycle as the sun rises, and then as the sun rises once again, we go through our full hormone cycle. And of course, the sun god was a male.
So they say we're hormonal. I'm sorry, but the male hormones are every day.
Every day,
not every month. So,
and you know, I think I'm going to ad lib to that a little, mm-hmm. and say that if any man is realizing that he gets horny at a specific hour of the day or a specific time, whether it be after work, before work, during at a specific time on lunch or something, or he gets angry at a certain time, these operations of our body, whether it be anger or a bonding time, those are part of our hormone cycle. Mm-hmm. And so don't get hard on yourself for, I know a lot of men are going through this huge movement of NoFap, and a lot of men are also going through this huge movement of identity crisis. Mm-hmm. And so don't get hard on yourself about any identity crisis that you're having, and it is every day, or about being overly stimulated in a certain area. Those are just part of your hormone cycle. And if your hormone cycle is unbalanced, it's a little bit harder to tell as a man, because we go through our whole hormone cycle in a day. So mm-hmm. So definitely come see a specialist like me.
Oh, you're so sweet. So how do we relate the Christus oil getting heaved up your spine to the moon cycle or to the month?
Okay. So it says in the Bible, and it says in different cultures all throughout the world, that we're supposed to witness the world and the world's beauty. And to make this short on spiritual texts, definitely look at witness and what that means to be a witness, and how that really plays a role in your health and and how that plays a role in your spiritual significance. What takes place in the spiritual must take place in the physical, and what takes place in the physical must take place in the spiritual. So what you're doing, what you're being, what you're saying in the physical will reflect in the spiritual. And if you're being a good person, of course it's going to reflect in the spiritual. And how that relates to the moon cycle, and when Christus is supposed to be reawakened by the Santa Claus, is when our pupils, which are literally just photon receptors that pick up light spectrum, they dilate, bigger and smaller, smaller with the more light and bigger with less light, so that it can take in lots of light. And in the Bible, in the book of Acts, in the book of Deuteronomy, in different places, it says that God is fire, and he's represented by the light. And if our bodies are quite literally trying to take in more light, then we're quite literally trying to take in God in his energy. And so when we take in light, there's a protein in our eye called melanopsin, and surgeons have found this protein, and they found that the light spectrums that you're looking at, whether it's the sun or it's the moon, that being that the moon and the sun have different frequencies, they have different electrical signatures, they'll create a different hormonal process. But what happens when we look at the sun or the moon, this melanopsin goes down your pupils into your retinas, down through your retinas into your pituitary, and it creates melanopsin and it takes melanopsin and turns it into, or creates melatonin from it. And melatonin is supposed to balance your circadian rhythm, or the electrical flow of your body. And if we're talking about astrology and physics, and how this all relates to your body, and all the spiritual significance of this, the circadian rhythm would be your flow and how you're connected to the world, and your magnetic pole. And so my best example when I'm working with clients about this is geese. You never see a goose being stuck here for winter. Well, the ones that do are eating breads and things that are quite bad for them. So if they're looking after the body, they know when to eat, they know when to sleep, they know when to breed, and they also know when to fly south for winter. And so that circadian rhythm happens inside the thyroid. The thyroid has 7 nodules to it. The doctor usually only tells you that there's a parathyroid, which looks like a butterfly, and it's on top of your 5th thyroid. But there's 7 nodules, there's 6 nodules, and that butterfly, or that parathyroid, and the 7th part of your thyroid, the last nodule, holds this circadian rhythm, or electrical flow, and it sends an electrical signal with this melatonin coming from down your brain into your 7th part of your thyroid, down into your thymus. And your thymus is the gland where you learn things. When someone's thymus is off, I say I have to repeat something twice, 3 times, and sometimes even a 4th time. It just kind of goes in one ear, out the other, over your head. And you need someone to repeat those instructions a few times. You can walk into a room, forget what you're doing. You're prone to sickness. The reason why that all happens is because the thymus gland is the part of your body that designs cells, tells cells where to go, what to do, by recreating them. And so thymus gland has a little duct that goes from it to the mesentery muscle that the Tibetan monks talk about. And it's comprised of your diaphragm, which is underneath your lungs, your pelvic floor, and your inner abdomen layer, and then there's a tissue that interweaves between all the organs, all the glands. It's like electrical fabric, and it holds all the organs and glands up. You ever heard of the term a gut feeling?
Oh yeah.
So a gut feeling, we pass a lot of these terms like moon cycle
Mm-hmm.
or a gut feeling down through
Mhm.
generations. We don't really know where they come from or what they
Mhm.
mean. And a gut feeling, quite literally, is a gut feeling, like shaking. When something is wrong or when something's right, you get those butterflies. And that gut feeling is your personality. Your brain doesn't hold any memories. It doesn't hold a single memory. All these memories are comprised of this amino acid chain called an engram, and the engram is held in your mesentery muscle or your mesentery tissue. And while this thymus creates this seed of a hormone for Christus, it goes through this duct into your mesentery muscle that the Hindus call the solar plexus. And he said, I am the sun. No one comes to the Father except through me. So a man has to look at the sun for this hormone cycle to actually start. A woman has to look at the moon. And if we were to control the strength of a personality of someone, we just have to get them to not look at the sun and not look at the moon. So quite frequently, I do prescribe or suggest or recommend that people
we don't
go.
prescribe.
I send them out into the sun, and you say, look at the sun for 8 seconds during the morning for the next 3 days, for a week, or to balance their hormone cycle. And same thing with the woman for the moon, and sometimes it's vice versa. And so
and trying to think of what I can and can't say, that looking at the sun might possibly help your eyes, because it helped mine by quite a few prescriptions, actually.
2.5 prescriptions.
Yeah, like this is actually the last pair of glasses that I have that until I have 20/20 vision. So.
And that's all from looking at the sun.
Sun, moon, and taking herbs, of course.
And taking herbs.
Yeah.
So herbs. I'm going to make a side note and say, is our food the same as it was 100 years ago?
No.
Is it the same as it was 50 years ago?
No.
How about 20 years ago?
No.
I was making a joke and say, how about yesterday? Because if you really look into how much effort goes into cleaning fruits and vegetables in agriculture, how much effort goes into genetically modifying this gourd to go from this size to this size, we have a bigger yield for our harvest. And
I can put it back.
and all this effort is not taken at the thought of your body and how it's really going to impact your body. It's really just for and so it impacts our body, and we no longer have. I mean, think of blueberries. Back when we were kids, like a blueberry might have been the size of my pinky nail, and now it takes up my palm.
Yeah.
And so what happens with genetic modification is the seed uses its own sugar and its own nutrients to almost implode on itself and basically make itself bigger with less nutrition, but a bigger, heavier fruit because it's holding water. Fruit, vegetable. And how does that impact our meat? It does the same thing. So the food is not the same as it was. And even it wasn't even the same as it was yesterday. Every day it's constantly changing with GMOs, pesticides, and herbicides. And so it becomes necessary for us to supplement with the right nutrition and the right herbs to get our bodies functioning the way they're supposed to and built the way they're supposed to be built. And to go back on the track of Christus, this hormone or this seed, this cell that's produced from the thymus going through the solar plexus will travel through your mesentery, which we now know as your personality. It'll travel through your personality, and this is where the Tao of sexology in the Chinese culture talks about blueprinting or creating the likeness of us through our children, and but based off the time that they're born and what thoughts we have when we're conceiving them, and so this seed travels through our mesentery muscle, and it sits and it goes through the lower abdomen right into the back of our tailbone in our sacrum, and that oil then goes through our testicles as a man and joins with the seeds that the thymus had just created, and it in an ejaculation it is our quite literally our seed. So in
that's right, we said ejaculation.
And so not PG anymore.
No PG. So, this is not made for kids.
And so if a man holds his ejaculation, and so you can definitely have credit to the NoFap movement there, because when a man holds his ejaculation on the full moon, that Christus will be sent up our spine. The one who saves the seed, or saves himself, I will save. And so being that these seeds are your personality, if you save yourself, I will save you, he says. Or God says, he, she, it. The same process happens for women. But if you have ever heard of blood magic before, or even in the Bible, Judeo-Christianity or Roman Catholicism, it has evidence of us using this idea of blood magic. And I'll give an example of in the story of when Egypt was going through the 10 plagues, the spirit of death God had sent to Egypt to take the firstborn son of all the homes, and if they were to protect themselves, then they had to take the blood of a lamb and put it over the doorpost and the front door, and that protected their house, their home, from the spirit of death coming and taking their firstborn children. And so a woman, if she puts her blood or her period blood inside plants, the plants will grow better, because all the hormones from you are going inside the plant. And I've heard testimonies of women feeling so much more connected to nature once they do that, so much more grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And when we burn blood, it has a different electricity that comes from that fire. If when we've monitored the actual electrical readings of it. And so the blood magic idea had come from women using their blood to fulfill intentions, because their blood contains the Christus inside of it. And this is very significant, because now you can manifest something outside of you. You can create something outside of you, and how much more physically representative of a baby is that?
Mm-hmm.
So women have quite a creative force that men actually don't have. We're generators, and we create things based off of what our women want and desire.
Mm.
And
and
if you're a man listening to this, I mean, happy wife, happy life. So whatever they want, they get.
This is true.
And they can use blood magic now, so be careful.
Yeah.
And so if a woman actually puts that period back on themselves, they put that Christus oil back in themselves. If they put it in their door, then they're protecting their home, because that Christus oil, that intention is inside that blood. And so what you do with that blood is I mean, it's up to you, but apply it to whatever desire that you have. And if I'm entertainment purposes talking about how you can fulfill an intention as a woman with your blood, then write a note. Write down exactly what you want to see have in life, have out of life, and every season or every month that you do that, it'll get closer and closer to manifesting into your life. And what's the biggest secret than that? The word for sacrum in Latin is synonymous, or it's the same word as secret. And so there's a big secret on how you create what you desire out of life, and you can have whatever you desire, so long as you're staying connected to the God that actually lives quite literally inside and through you in your hormone cycle.
So when that oil gets heaved up your spine, and during that time of crucifixion, when you're either on your period or on a full moon, hopefully they sync up.
When they do, then
right?
you know that you're on a proper hormone cycle,
Yeah.
and your Christus is now connected to the synchronicities of the world. And if it's not, then unfortunately you have to wait a few more months before it's before it actually adjusts.
But still put, like, your Christus still matters though. So you
It
still have a
has
Christus,
power.
yeah. So once it gets heaved up your spine, during that period of crucifixion is when you write down your desires, write down your intention for the month. And then electrically, talk about electrically what it does to your brain. It sends gifts, right? Santa Claus gives gifts, but
Well, your pineal gland, and I guess I
Yeah.
forgot to mention this particular portion, is your pineal gland, according to different cultures that study the chakra systems, but even in the Western culture, we know that it is your spiritual gate. And so people who have an underdeveloped or under-functioning pineal gland, they will hear things that aren't necessarily there. When it's overactive, they'll see things that aren't necessarily there. And like I said at the beginning, we can call that schizophrenia. We can call that, paranoia. We can call that, paranoia, and we can call it, schizophrenia or paranoia.
Yeah.
There's another term, but I'm not really versed in those terms, because you don't have something, you're just dealing with something. And if you say you're dealing with something, your body then has the ability to change that.
Yeah, your brain is logical. So
very literal.
The second you identify with something, your brain's like, yep, I got it.
I am that.
Yeah,
and
I
then
am.
It creates that. So that's that I am thing again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what are you? You can have these affirmations, say, I am this, I am that. If you're not putting in the action, faith without works is dead. If you're not putting in the action of saying that you are this, you feel this, you speak this, you act this, you do this, you think about this, then that's going to fall away. But again, quoting the Bible, is faith is small as a mustard seed can move mountains. And so if you have just the smallest little intention and you know it's going to happen with just a little tiny bit of faith, then you can make that thing happen in your life.
So the cell comes back to life after the 2.5 days, and electrically, what does it do to the pineal gland?
And the pineal gland is an electrical magnet.
Yeah.
And so if you have a magnet inside your brain that's enabling a system called it's enabling a system in your brain called the reticular activating system. It's a system of glands. It enables this reticular activating system to find and look for the patterns that follow exactly what you want, you feel, you are, and you identify with, and it'll bring that to you and into your life, whether it's through a person, through a thing, and it'll say, I'll do this thing until I get that, or I'll make friends with this person, or I'll be like this person, or this person has this, and we can create it together.
Yeah.
And so your brain will quite literally, with a magnet, pull in to your body, desire, to your life,
what you identify with,
you identify with, and your desire.
Yeah.
You just gotta have a little bit of faith.
Yes. Cheers to that.
Absolutely.
So that concludes our talk about Christus. Like, subscribe, book a reading, book an appointment. Yeah.
And I can figure out exactly where your hormone cycle is and what you're missing to get your hormone cycle online, so that you can manifest these things.
Yes.
The way you want.
And we love our men's hormones. Happy wife, happy life. Okay, anyway, that concludes our talk. Thank you for listening, and hope that this helps you, because this has certainly helped me and my lover. And a lot of our clients. Anyway, send you guys tons